I grew the family business to $30 million, then my brother said, "Time to step aside. You're worthless." The words still echoed in my mind like a cruel chant, slicing through the fragile armor of confidence I had built over years of relentless work. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment of triumph for what we had achieved together as a family. The business, once on the brink of collapse when our parents passed away unexpectedly, now stood tall as a testament to perseverance and vision. $30 million in revenue wasn't just a number, it was proof that their legacy lived on, stronger than ever. But instead of pride, all I felt was betrayal. My brother's voice rang cold and sharp across the boardroom table, his eyes devoid of the warmth they used to hold. "You've done your part," he said with an unsettling calmness, leaning back in his chair as if delivering a verdict rather than a conversation. "Now it's time for you to step aside. Let someone more capable take over." His words hit me like a freight train, but it was the smirk tugging at the corner of his lips that truly broke something inside me. More capable? I heard myself ask, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay composed. After everything I've done? After dragging this company out of debt and building it into what it is today? My hands clenched into fists beneath the polished mahogany surface, nails digging into my palms as if physical pain could anchor me to reality. He shrugged casually, glancing around the room as though seeking approval from invisible spectators. "Numbers don't lie, sis. Sure, you kept things afloat, but let's face it, this growth wouldn't have happened without my connections. And besides," he paused, letting his gaze settle on me with calculated disdain. "Running a business isn't about hard work alone. It's about strategy, about seeing opportunities where others see obstacles. That's never been your strong suit." Every syllable dripped with condescension, each word carefully chosen to wound. Yet beneath the anger bubbling within me, there was another emotion, something darker, heavier. Doubt. Was he right? Had I merely been lucky, riding the coattails of circumstance while pretending to be something I wasn't? No, I couldn't believe that. Not after everything. Growing up, my brother and I were inseparable. We shared secrets under the covers late at night, fought over who got the last slice of pizza, and dreamed big dreams about taking over the world, or at least the small manufacturing company our parents ran. But those days seemed impossibly distant now, buried under layers of resentment and ambition neither of us knew how to navigate. When Mom and Dad died in a car accident 10 years ago, everything changed overnight. One moment, we were carefree kids basking in the security of parental love. The next, we were thrust into roles we weren't ready for. At 24, I became the reluctant CEO of a struggling business, while my brother, 2 years older, stepped into a supporting role as operations manager. Neither of us had any formal training in running a company, but necessity forced us to learn quickly, or risk losing everything. At first, we worked well together. There were long nights spent poring over financial statements, brainstorming ways to cut costs without sacrificing quality. We argued, yes, but always with the shared goal of keeping the business alive. Those early days bonded us in ways I thought would last forever. I remember the look on his face when we secured our first major client. It was pure joy, unfiltered and unrestrained. For a while, I believed we were unstoppable. But success has a way of changing people, doesn't it? As the business grew, so did the cracks between us. What started as minor disagreements escalated into full-blown clashes. He accused me of micromanaging, of being too cautious. I countered by pointing out his tendency to chase risky ventures without considering the consequences. Over time, those arguments became less about the business and more about who deserved credit for its survival. And then came the promotions. New hires brought fresh perspectives and innovative ideas, fueling exponential growth. Revenue soared, partnerships flourished, and industry awards piled up on our shelves. Through it all, I took pride in leading the charge, in proving that even in the face of tragedy, we could thrive. But somewhere along the way, I stopped noticing the shift in my brother's demeanor. His smiles became fewer, his contributions quieter. Until today, when he finally revealed the storm brewing beneath the surface. Sitting in my office hours later, I stared blankly at the framed photo on my desk, a candid shot of our family taken during one of those rare moments when life felt perfect. Mom's laugh lines crinkled around her eyes, Dad's arm draped protectively over her shoulder. My brother and I stood beside them, grinning like fools, completely unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. How naive we'd been. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. Without waiting for a response, Sarah, my trusted assistant, peeked inside. Her expression softened when she saw me hunched over the desk, shoulders slumped. "Hey," she said gently, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" I wanted to tell her yes, to put on the brave face I reserved for moments like these. But the words caught in my throat, choking me with their weight. Instead, I shook my head, tears spilling down my cheeks before I could stop them. "Oh, sweetie," Sarah murmured, pulling me into a hug. She didn't say anything else, just held me as sobs racked my body. When the worst of it subsided, she handed me a tissue and sat down across from me. "Do you want to talk about it?" For a moment, I hesitated. Could I trust her with the raw truth? With anyone? But Sarah wasn't just my assistant, she was my confidant, my rock. So I told her everything, the confrontation, the accusations, the gnawing doubt creeping into my mind. To her credit, she listened without judgment, nodding occasionally as if piecing together a puzzle. When I finished, she leaned forward, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "What he said, that's not true. You've poured your heart and soul into this company. You've sacrificed relationships, personal happiness, even sleep to make sure it succeeded. Don't let him make you forget that." Her words offered a flicker of comfort, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she was wrong. Maybe I was fooling myself, clinging to a role I wasn't meant to play. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of meetings, emails, and sleepless nights. Despite my attempts to push forward, my brother's words haunted me like a ghost, whispering doubts whenever I faltered. Colleagues noticed the change in me, my usual decisiveness replaced by hesitation, my confidence eroded by uncertainty. Even clients remarked on my distracted demeanor, though none dared to ask why. One evening, exhausted and defeated, I found myself wandering the empty halls of the office long after everyone else had gone home. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the walls lined with plaques and photographs commemorating milestones. Milestones I had helped achieve. Or had I? Stopping in front of a display case, I studied the awards inside, each one bearing my name alongside accolades celebrating leadership and innovation. They felt foreign now, as if they belonged to someone else entirely. Someone stronger, smarter, more deserving. As I stood there lost in thought, a soft voice startled me. "I wondered where you'd disappeared to." Turning, I saw Marcus, one of our senior executives, approaching with a concerned expression. He carried 2 cups of coffee, offering one to me with a tentative smile. "Figured you might need this." "Thanks," I muttered, accepting the cup but making no move to drink from it. "You've been different lately," he observed, leaning against the wall beside me. "Is everything okay?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Part of me wanted to unload every thought swirling in my head, to seek validation or advice or simply understanding. But another part, the stubborn defensive part, clamped down on the urge. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just tired, I guess." Marcus studied me for a moment longer, clearly unconvinced but wise enough not to press further. "Well, if you ever need to talk, you know where to find me." His kindness only made the lump in my throat grow larger. Nodding mutely, I watched him walk away, leaving me alone once again with my thoughts. That night, unable to sleep, I pulled out an old journal tucked away in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Its pages were filled with entries dating back to the early days of running the business, notes scribbled in haste, lists of goals, reminders of lessons learned. Flipping through them now, I marveled at how much had changed, and yet, how some things remained the same. One entry caught my eye, written shortly after our first major win. "Today reminded me why I do this," it read. "Not for recognition or money, but because I believe in what we're building. Because I owe it to Mom and Dad to honor their memory. And because deep down, I know I'm capable of greatness, even if no one else sees it yet." Reading those words felt like rediscovering a piece of myself I'd forgotten existed. Back then, I hadn't needed anyone's approval to feel worthy. I'd trusted my instincts, embraced my strengths, and faced challenges head-on without fear of failure. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost sight of that person. Closing the journal, I set it aside and climbed out of bed, pacing the room as adrenaline coursed through my veins. For the first time in days, clarity began to emerge from the fog of self-doubt. My brother's words may have hurt, but they didn't define me. Only I could decide my worth, and I refused to let anyone take that away. Tomorrow, I vowed silently, would be different. The next morning, I arrived at the office before sunrise, determined to reclaim not just my confidence but also the narrative of my journey. The air was crisp, tinged with the faint scent of autumn leaves carried in through the open windows. For once, the silence wasn't oppressive, it felt like a blank canvas, waiting for me to paint something new. I sat at my desk, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop, and began typing. Not emails or reports, but a letter, to myself. It started as a stream of consciousness exercise, a way to organize the chaos swirling inside me. But as the words flowed, they took shape into something more profound, a declaration of purpose, a reminder of who I was beneath the weight of expectations and criticism. To the woman who built this business from ashes, I wrote, you are stronger than you know. You've faced impossible odds before, and you've always found a way forward, not because someone told you to, but because it was what you believed in. Don't let anyone, least of all your brother, diminish the fire that drives you. By the time I finished, tears blurred the screen, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of resolve. This wasn't just about defending my position, it was about honoring the sacrifices I'd made and the person I'd become along the way. Later that day, I called an impromptu meeting with the executive team. When everyone gathered around the conference table, their expressions ranged from curious to concerned. No one knew quite what to expect, especially given the tension that had been simmering since my brother's outburst days earlier. I want to start by thanking each of you, I said, standing at the head of the table. My voice trembled slightly, but I forced myself to meet every pair of eyes. Not just for your hard work, but for believing in this company even when things seemed uncertain. Together, we've accomplished incredible things. And now, I need your help. A murmur rippled through the room, and Marcus leaned forward, his brow furrowed. What do you mean? Taking a deep breath, I laid it all out, the confrontation with my brother, the self-doubt that had crept in, the realization that I couldn't continue down this path alone. I'm not asking for sympathy, I clarified. What I'm asking is for us to double down on what makes this company great: collaboration, innovation, and trust. Because if we lose sight of those values, then none of us will succeed, not me, not him, not any of you. Silence followed my words, heavy and charged. Finally, Sarah broke it. So what's the plan? Her question hung in the air, daring me to rise to the occasion. And I did. Over the next hour, we brainstormed strategies to solidify our leadership structure, streamline communication, and ensure transparency moving forward. By the end of the meeting, there was a palpable shift in energy, an unspoken agreement that we were stronger together than apart. As people filed out of the room, Marcus lingered behind. You handled that well, he said, offering a small smile. But you don't have to shoulder everything yourself, you know. His kindness caught me off guard. I know, I replied softly. But sometimes, you have to take the first step toward change before others can follow. That evening, I met my brother outside the building. He looked surprised to see me waiting, his usual swagger replaced by cautious curiosity. What is this about? He asked, crossing his arms over his chest. We need to talk, I said firmly, gesturing toward a nearby bench. Reluctantly, he followed me, sitting stiffly as though preparing for battle. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The streetlights flickered above us, casting long shadows across the pavement. Then I turned to face him, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Why did you say those things to me? Was it really about the business, or is there something else going on? He hesitated, his gaze dropping to his hands. When he finally spoke, his tone was quieter, less combative. It's complicated. Try me, I challenged, leaning closer. Because right now, all I hear is noise. If you have a problem with how I'm running things, fine, we'll address it. But undermining me in front of the entire team? That's not okay. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's not about how you're running things. Honestly, I never expected you to turn this place around the way you did. But, his voice trailed off, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in his expression. I feel like I've been sidelined. Like no matter what I do, it's never enough. His admission hit me like a punch to the gut. All this time, I'd assumed his hostility stemmed from arrogance or jealousy. But hearing him admit to feeling overlooked shattered my assumptions, and ignited a spark of empathy. "You're not invisible," I said after a pause. "And maybe I haven't done enough to acknowledge your contributions. But tearing me down isn't the answer. If you want more responsibility, if you want a seat at the table, then earn it. Work with me, not against me." The tension between us softened, though it didn't disappear entirely. Still, it was progress, a fragile beginning to rebuilding what we'd lost. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into redefining my role within the company. With input from the executive team, I implemented initiatives to foster inclusivity and accountability, ensuring everyone, from entry-level employees to senior leadership, felt valued and heard. Slowly but surely, morale improved, and productivity soared. Yet despite these strides, the lingering friction with my brother remained unresolved. While he agreed to collaborate more openly, old habits died hard. There were moments when frustration bubbled to the surface, threatening to undo the fragile truce we'd established. But each time, I reminded myself why it mattered, because family wasn't just blood, it was choice, effort, and forgiveness. One afternoon, as I reviewed quarterly projections in my office, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sarah. "Just saw him talking to clients. Looked like he meant business." Curious, I glanced out the window to see my brother shaking hands with a group of investors, his demeanor confident and composed. For the first time in months, pride swelled in my chest, not for myself but for him. Maybe, just maybe, we were finding our way back to each other. But as fate would have it, peace rarely lasts forever. A few days later, an anonymous email landed in my inbox, its contents explosive. Documents, financial records, allegations of misconduct, all pointing toward a betrayal so profound it threatened to unravel everything we'd worked for. My hands shook as I scrolled through the attachments, dread pooling in my stomach. At the center of it all was a name I never thought I'd see tied to scandal, my brother. Confrontation loomed inevitable, yet the question gnawed at me: how far was I willing to go to protect the business, and the family, that meant everything to me? I stared at the email for what felt like an eternity, the weight of its implications pressing down on me. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the evidence before me with the brother I had grown up idolizing, the boy who used to share his toys and defend me from bullies. Could he really be capable of this? And if so, why? Summoning every ounce of courage, I called him into my office. He arrived with a casual grin, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "What's up?" he asked, dropping into a chair as though nothing was amiss. Instead of answering immediately, I slid the printed documents across the desk toward him. His expression shifted instantly, from confusion to shock, then finally to something darker. "Guilt. What is this?" he demanded, though his voice wavered. "You tell me," I said, my tone icy despite the turmoil raging within. "These records show unauthorized transfers, questionable partnerships, and embezzlement. Care to explain?" For a moment, he said nothing, his eyes darting between the papers and my face. Then, exhaling sharply, he leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I shot back, anger bubbling to the surface. "Because it sure looks like you've been siphoning money out of the company for months. Money we worked our asses off to earn." He flinched at my words but didn't deny them outright. Instead, he launched into a convoluted explanation about mounting debts, risky investments gone wrong, and promises to repay everything once certain deals came through. But no matter how much he justified or rationalized, one truth remained undeniable: he had betrayed the trust of everyone who depended on this business, including me. The hours that followed were among the hardest of my life. We argued, shouted, cried, every emotion laid bare in the confines of that room. At times, I wanted to lash out, to scream until my voice gave out. Other times, I wanted to collapse under the crushing weight of betrayal. Yet through it all, I held on to one guiding principle: justice must prevail, not revenge. By the end of the conversation, we both knew there was only one course of action left. With a heavy heart, I informed him that he would need to step down from his position effective immediately. Legal counsel would review the extent of his actions, and appropriate measures would be taken based on their findings. As he stood to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat, I called his name softly. He turned, tears glistening in his eyes. For a fleeting second, I saw the little boy he once was, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who cheered me on during school plays, who promised we'd always have each other's backs. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, I replied, my own voice thick with emotion. But intentions don't erase consequences. In the days that followed, I faced some of the toughest decisions of my career. The scandal sent shockwaves through the company, shaking investor confidence and testing employee loyalty. Rumors swirled, media outlets speculated, and competitors circled like vultures waiting to pick apart the remains of our empire. But instead of crumbling under the pressure, I chose transparency. I addressed the team openly, acknowledging the mistakes made while reaffirming our commitment to integrity and accountability. I implemented stricter oversight protocols and reassigned key responsibilities to trusted executives, ensuring the business could continue operating smoothly. To my surprise, many rallied around me during this crisis. Clients expressed support, colleagues doubled down on their efforts, and even former critics praised my handling of the situation. Slowly but surely, we began to rebuild, not just the company, but its reputation. Months later, as I sat in the same boardroom where my brother had delivered his cruel verdict, I reflected on how far we'd come. Revenue had stabilized, morale had improved, and new opportunities were emerging on the horizon. Yet the scars of the past lingered, reminders of lessons learned the hard way. One evening, as I packed up to leave the office, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a handwritten letter from my brother. "Dear, your name," it began. "I know I can never undo the damage I caused, not to the business, not to you. All I can do is apologize and hope that someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. Please know that I've started therapy and am working to understand why I made such reckless choices. You were right, I let fear and pride cloud my judgment, and I lost sight of what truly mattered, family. Thank you for showing me grace when I deserved none. Love, brother's name." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I read his words. Forgiveness wouldn't come easily, it might take years if ever, but reading his letter reminded me of something important. People are flawed, messy, and capable of change. Including myself. Today, the business stands stronger than ever, a testament to resilience and perseverance. As for my brother, we're still navigating the complexities of reconciliation. It's a slow, painful process, but one I believe is worth pursuing. After all, family isn't perfect, it's human. And sometimes, the greatest victories aren't measured in dollars or accolades, but in the courage to rebuild what's broken. Standing outside the office building, I looked up at the sky, now painted with streaks of orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace, a quiet knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, with the same determination that had brought me this far. The journey wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for now, I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to heal, and to dream of brighter days ahead.